Cons are great, except when you're being groped. This week on Extra-Ordi-Nerdy, we're going to tell you what cons you can go to that you can be safe from that.
I don't feel safe.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, after that incredibly awkward introduction, it's time for us to actually have a, well, moderately awkward discussion. No?
Sure.
Why
It's a
not?
good time.
It's like the birds and the bees. It must be so.
Yeah, right. You want to talk about it, but
I
it's got
have
to
the
be
feeling
discussed.
that most people at conventions know how the birds and the bees work. Both literally and figuratively. I think if you walk up and say how do birds work, and be like, alright, sit down, we're going to start with dinosaurs, we're going to work our way up to wings.
Velociraptors.
But, okay, this particular one was inspired by the fact that I've had several people ask me, like, hey, you go to conventions and you don't seem to hate them. How is that possible? What are the best conventions to go to if you happen to have lady bits or happen to have some melanin in your skin? And I've got some answers.
Answers are
And
good.
what are they?
The answers are not...
Well, I'm glad you asked.
The answer is not, here is a list of conventions. The answer instead is, here's a list of how to pick the right conventions, in my opinion. So, first off, what I think you should do is look for a local, non-profit convention in your area, run by fans for fans. Those are going to be not 100%, none of this will apply 100%, but those are in general your least rapey conventions. The best ones to go to, in my opinion, are ones that also have like a local fan group that you can talk to. So if you can go and meet some of these people at the local science fiction club a month or two in advance, they're going to want to have your back because they know you, and they're going to be less likely to be harassy anyway. Second off, any conventions with a lot of cosplay. So I'm going to call this the Dragon Con effect as opposed to the San Diego Comic-Con effect. Conventions with a lot of cosplay tend to have a lot more women at them, and the more women around, the safer you tend to be. If you're one of 10 women at a convention, you're more likely to get bugged than if you're one of hundreds of them at a convention. So there's just that as an element. And that ties into the third and biggest factor of all, and that is conventions with a large maker presence. Ask me what I mean by maker present, lads.
What do you mean by maker presence?
Lads.
Any people that are actually constructing something from scratch, and it doesn't matter what it is they're making. They could be making Star Wars armor. That stuff takes a lot of work. They could be making steampunk devices. They could be making podcasts. They could be writing books. People that go from nothing and create something that is real are the people you want to be around. Because I have a theory.
Dude, so.
Yes.
My theory is that there are basically two major types of fans out there, and this is why the ones you should avoid are the ones you should come near. Fans that are really into buying things, and fans that are really into making things. So when you go to the commercial cons, like San Diego Comic-Con, WonderCon, increasingly a lot of the Wizard World conventions, everybody there, not everybody, the assholes that are there, that are defining themselves as a geek, are usually defining themselves as a geek by how much they can consume, not how much they can create. If some guy comes up and says, you know what, I own every single edition of Game of Thrones in the original, as well as I translated it into Valerian, and I bought all the German editions, and if it's in any language, I own it. What he's really saying is, here's how much money I have spent on my fandom, not here's what I've made to contribute to it. If, on the other hand, somebody walks and be like, dude, I made an entire puppet replica of Ned Stark that's head comes off. You want to see it? Yes, you want to see it. That would be awesome. Who are you going to feel safer alone in a room with? The dude with creepy versions of things in German, or the dude who can pull a head off of a puppet? Believe it or not, you want to stick with the puppet dude.
I'd be comfortable with neither. I'd be comfortable with the guy who can recreate ice. I will stand by that man.
That would be pretty awesome to have someone that could forge a sword.
Out of Valerian steel.
Out of a metal that doesn't actually exist. That's pretty impressive.
So, again, my theory of the day on this is it's consumption versus creation. Look at the program schedule of your conventions, and this is why, by the way, convention runners, con committees, you should leave last year's program schedule up so people will get an idea of the type of programming that you have available. That'll help them decide if they want to come. If you have a bunch of stuff up there showing that, like, hey, we had somebody in here doing a demo with the MakerBot, and we had a demo with the 501st Legion showing how they make armor, and we had the steampunk people out, I'm going to feel really safe going to that convention because there's something about makers. They're less likely to, I mean, again, there are exceptions, less likely to be assholes, and they're much more concerned with showing you, like, I made this thing, than, like, hey. I personally think that my theory about why this is that people that go to the commercial cons and define themselves entirely by how much they've spent, they walk in and they're already looking at everybody around them in terms of dollar amounts. They're just going to look at you like, $20 shirt, probably $15 shirt, you guys got any jewelry or other tattoos or anything visible? They're automatically just summarizing you down to cash. And that's not a great way to look at people. And I hate to say, but the same type of guys that are likely to be more harassy when they're summarizing things down to cash, if they're looking at ladies, they're not looking at you in terms of how much you spent on your cosplay. They're looking at you in terms of how much would they spend for a night with you, and they're going to undervalue it no matter what, which is the worst part. That's their mindset going in. Whereas again, with a more maker-oriented convention, and I define maker very broadly, I consider what we're doing with making this show to be making as well. Just creating anything. They're much more likely to just want to, like, the first thing that's going to come up is like, oh, hey, you guys have a podcast? Tell me all about it. You also do a video series. That's awesome. I write cookbooks. Yay, you have something to talk about other than how much money you have spent, and you're not getting into that same level of competition with it. So that's my basic set of rules in a nutshell about how to find a safe convention that you want to go to. Do you guys have anything you'd like to add?
Just basically, I kind of agree with where you're going with that. Especially when you think about, maker culture, you're pretty much around more creative types. Mm-hmm. And obviously, not everyone who's creative is not an asshole. Yeah. But I mean, obviously, some are, Steve Jobs. But I mean, in general, people like that are just a lot easier to get along with. Yeah. And like you said, they're more interested in being passionate about what they've created rather than seeing you as a dollar sign or someone who's going to come buy their stuff. Because a lot of times, like when we went to StapleCon here in Austin, a lot of people are like, they're not expecting to make money. Like, if anything, they're expecting to maybe make back the money they spent to buy the table. But mainly they're just like, hey, I just want people to see my stuff. Like, this is really interesting and meet new people.
And all the conversations there were fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, everybody we got to talk to, they were delightful people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, even the con goer, Uncle Staple.
Oh, yeah. He's a delight.
Yeah, one of the coolest dudes you could ever meet. So, just highly recommend going to StapleCon if you're ever in Austin.
Yeah. So, again, in a nutshell, is it fan-run, yes or no? If it is fan-run, is there a huge maker presence, or is it more a local Comic-Con? Is it a Comic-Con? I hate to say, Comic-Cons are just bad. They're bad news. So try and find something that's more along the Dragon Con arc of things that has a lot of programming and a lot of makers and a lot of cosplay, and something that's not just a giant mall for nerds. If it's just a giant mall for nerds with some cosplayers, they're going to assume that you are there as something that can be bought and will treat you like an object.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, where it is just kind of like a mall. Because you look at Wizard World, that's pretty much all it is.
Yeah.
All it is vendor booths. Mm-hmm. And, people that we went to get a fan table, like the whole process there, it's almost like, when you call someone...
They don't want you to have a fan table at Wizard World, in my opinion.
It's like trying to call tech support, and you got to jump through all these hoops to try and get to the actual human being that's there, Yeah. It's just like, it's very cold. It's not like if you go up to someone that you can actually, first of all, talk to face-to-face and actually have a relationship with. If we, wanted to talk to, say, Uncle Staple and say, hey, this is what we do, are you interested? And we can actually get feedback, and he might have genuine interest in having us there, rather than like, hey, give me some money for a table.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a huge difference.
Yeah.
I got one thing to add.
Yes, please.
Whatever con you're going to, if they have a website, with more times than not, everyone will. Check their About Me, if they have an About Me, and see if they have an SOP that states anything about anti-harassment to any capacity. And if they have anything that sounds legit or sounds good, or Emerald City Comic Con's website actually has a really great one. Mm-hmm. So you can look there, and that right there will give you a great... something to look for.
And it's okay to me if it's copied and pasted. Like, if they take a look at Emerald City Comic Con and go, yeah, those are good rules, we're going to use those too.
Yeah, that's a good outline to follow and be like, okay, well, if I want to be comfortable, I can look at Emerald City Comic Con's About Me and be like, okay, now I need to look for something that fills in all of these, or at least a good amount of these for me to feel comfortable at this con. But
And on a similar tangent, I would say also look at the style of advertising they put out. Like, you know where I'm going with this one.
If there's a boob window.
If there's a boob window, the thing about the boob window on that one, it's not that it wasn't funny. It's that I look at that and I say, if somebody harasses me at this convention, no one will take it seriously. They'll say it was my fault for being there to begin with, and if I was in cosplay, even if it's very modest cosplay, they will say it was my fault for dressing up. When you send out a message like that says, hi, we've already decided we're going to sexualize everybody here, even if they're 5 years old, doesn't matter, we're going to sexualize them, then it just doesn't feel safe and comfortable. I mean, there was which other convention recently had a new Portland convention? Had a huge kerfuffle with that, where someone it's a brand new convention, someone emailed them saying, you know, I've had second thoughts, can I get my membership money back because I don't really feel safe going to a Comic-Con. And instead of this guy going, well, that's a real shame, I wish you would come, here's your money back, he just savaged her on Facebook.
It was,
you know what, we don't need to advertise the Comic-Con.
Yeah,
So
I don't even remember what it was.
He went crazy on her on Facebook in both private and public forums. That got copied and pasted and passed around, and understandably people are going, if that's how he's treating someone before the convention begins, when there's no stress, because behind the scenes there's always stress going on at a convention, how awful will he be the first time some woman comes up and be like, that dude over there, I'm really sick, can you keep him away from me, because that was just inappropriate. That guy is going to say it was your fault.
Yeah.
You can just rest assured he accepts no responsibility for his actions or the actions of anyone at his convention.
Like, silence $.
Exactly.
You get back to the register.
And so pay attention to the advertising. And it's not that you can't have sexy things on your ads. It's how the sexy's done, if that makes sense. Like, if it's a whole body, if it's one of those classic, like Conan cover type of things, where you've got like the woman in the chainmail bikini and the guy that's in almost as little and rah, they're stabbing a tiger. That used to be a staple of convention flyers, that style of art. Okay, you've got whole bodies, everybody's represented. It's when you start cutting out individual pieces of people's body, and that's when it gets creepy.
Yeah, it's pretty dehumanizing. You know, it's one thing where it's like, yeah, here is a sexy person. And it's like, okay, here's just the one part of an anatomy.
Yeah.
Like, that's all.
Well, the thing is, like, it was a Comic-Con that's more family-oriented, and then they posted a very chesty, well-known cosplayer who even came out and said, I didn't release that picture to them, and I only wear that to Dragon Con, which is more like 21 and up convention.
That also begs a whole separate discussion from finding safe conventions, but if you do go out and cosplay, which I think you should, I think it's a ton of fun, most cosplayers are pretty aware of what is appropriate in different environments. She was playing, there was Mr. Sinister and Dark Phoenix. Yeah. And so it's like, there's not much there. And she was beautiful and she did it very well. Yeah. But you can't just go, if you're running a family convention, you can't just go steal a picture of a woman from a totally unrelated convention who would never have worn that to your convention.
Yeah.
Well, apparently you can, but the point is, if you do, what's going to happen is people like us are going to talk about you and say, ladies, you're not safe at this convention. Honestly, sane people probably should stay away regardless of your gender.
It just is a testament to just how seedy that convention is, you know? So they can't even, it's like, it's bad enough that they're not even going to take someone's complaint seriously, but like to try and make their argument, they're going to use something they're going to steal someone else's photo to try and back up their lies.
Which doesn't make any sense to me at all. What fandom is lacking, sadly, and I understand why, is we don't have a good, like, Angie's List review system type of thing for conventions. You can go to Reddit and try and find things, but Reddit is Reddit, you know. People are gonna hate because they enjoy hating, even if it's something that they actually love in real life. And there are individual blogs where people will post things, but they'll blog about the one con I went to, not here's a 1 to 10 scale and I have even ratings and things like that. I would love it if someone could set up, like Upcoming Cons is trying to do that, but I think they're having difficulty getting money, and so it's not very consistent or even. I would love to see a consistent, even, reliable rating system that people could look at, because you know what? Sometimes skeeves want to go have fun with other skeeves. That's fine. Just make sure we know where you are. So those of us that don't want to be skeeved on can stay away.
We can run you through with ice.
So, we are very curious, for those of you that have been to conventions, what do you think? Do you think that we've come up with a fairly good metric for measuring what a good convention, well, not good or bad, but convention where women and people of color are less likely to be harassed versus more likely to be harassed? We'd really love your feedback on this. We'd also really love to hear from you about individual specific conventions you've been to. Give us your pros, give us your cons, put them in the comments. If we get enough of them, we'll put up a special episode about that. Because I know that people really want to know, because I'm constantly bombarded with this question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a very important question. It's like, especially, if you've never been to a convention, like, you have no idea what you're getting into.
And if you've never been to one, please, please, please do not go to a Comic-Con first. I understand that in most towns, that's probably going to be your biggest convention. If you have to drive 4 or 5 hours out of town to something else, please go to something other than a Comic-Con first, because I know so many women, their first convention was a Comic-Con. They just showed up in a t-shirt and jeans and still got harassed because, oh no, you're female at a Comic-Con. And it took years for me to convince them that, like, no, fandom's actually kind of awesome. It's this small, small segment of people that are assholes. Please don't judge everybody by the assholes.
Don't. Judge them by us three here.
Yeah, because the number one thing that I hope you'll take out of this, even though we're offering you warnings and things along those lines, is we're also telling you the good places to go. We all do this because fanish culture in general is awesome. Awesome in a way that the Lego movie can never be. And I'm 100%
They're working
serious.
on it.
We'll see.
Well,
My cynicism, excuse me as I stroke my invisible cynical beard here.
They're paying lip service to it. At least they've acknowledged that there's a problem.
Yeah.
And that's the first step to getting help.
But so much of geek culture is honest to goodness, just freaking, it's so much fun. You get to meet other people that you wouldn't in real life that have things in common with you, that share your crazy niche interests. Like, I have a crazy love of 90s X-Men, and I can get into, like, discussions of, okay, here's how Mystique and Magneto are actually related through their granddaughter from an alternate universe. And people are like, yes, let's continue this discussion, possibly over drinks. And I love that so much. So we don't want you to think, when we're saying, okay, ladies, you're going to get harassed, that it's all bad. And we don't want you to think that we're just, like, toughing it out for no good reason, because we all have jobs. We could do other stuff with our lives if it was a nonstop suck fest. But we want to help you find the best parts.
There is awesome sauce to be found.
Delicious sauce.
It's dripping off the bowl.
Sriracha.
You have no idea how that's pronounced. The Johnny Storm hot sauce of all things. All right, we will see you next time on the next episode of Extraordinary.
Hot sauce.